Welcome to National Youth Service. Established in 1964 to train young people in important national matters, it was restructured by His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta into a premier agency through which government executes an elaborate and comprehensive youth empowerment master plan.
Kwanza napenda kumshukuru mteremezi kwa kuniumba jinsi nilivyo. Niko na ulemavu wa macho. Pia ningependa kushukuru Director General kwa kutuhold hapa. Niliambiwa na marafiki zangu miaka iliyopita kwa wanachukua watu ambao ni walemavu, but saizi wanachukua ambao ni walemavu.
I came here just to achieve my dream and to be somebody special so that I can be someone useful in the society.
Instructor peke yake, correct demo, about turn by numbers. Turn by numbers, about turn, 1-1.
This is where we feed service human recruits. We have messes. We have double span. We call it double span because there are two wings. There is this wing and the other wing. So one wing can hold 1,200. The other one can hold 1,200. So with the complex here, we can feed 4,800 at a go.
I joined NYS after being told by my friend who was there here before, giving thanks to the government, NYS, everybody, thank you for incorporating us here.
This financial year, there are 7,478 recruits graduating at NYS Paramilitary Academy. Recently, National Youth Service launched a program involving training of border. National Youth Service, huduma kwa taifa.
And on that note, we are now joined by Matilda Sakwa, who is the Director General at the National Youth Service. Good morning, Matilda. Thank you for making time to be with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Kenya.
Good to have you again.
Thank you so much. Always glad to be with you.
Fantastic. Now, I want us to just get straight into this particular conversation. And of course, I want us to start with the basics as we build onto this particular conversation. Of course, in line with the culmination of the Passa parade that will be happening. But maybe we could start with helping our viewers understand, the mandate and the functions of the National Youth Service, and especially since you took office.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The mandate of the National Youth Service is basically to train disciplined and uniformed youth. Secondly, our other mandate is to ensure that we empower the youth through skill development. That's why we take them to vocational training. And lastly, our mandate has been expanded to do commercialization so that the National Youth Service is able to engage in other commercial activities. But the core of the National Youth Service is to impart skills, to train, and to ensure that the youth of this country are patriotic, and they can actually also withstand any situation in the country. And therefore, that's why we take them to paramilitary training so that they can get these skills, and therefore they can have that endurance that we're looking for. It is an issue of character development. Development.
Now, I like the fact that you've mentioned, issues to do with character development, because this is well in line with the younger population of our country. And one would just like to see the relationship that you as the National Youth Service have to play in line with making sure that the graduates that you put out in the country are in line with the priorities even of the country. So maybe you could take us through, how as the National Youth Service you are aligning your training to the national agenda.
Thank you so much. Thank you, studio. Now, the first thing we must understand is that before these youths are taken through any training that can answer to the demands of the country, we must take them through paramilitary training, as I said, so that we can mold them and build their character. Then secondly, they go to national service where they serve the country for 1 full year. And during this service of 1 full year, they engage in activities of national importance. For example, we have the railway rehabilitation. We also do security at the airport, at KICC, and other installations. We also ensure that we participate with other government agencies, just to ensure that these youths that we have now to graduate them to a vocational training understand that their role is to ensure the country moves in the right direction. Now, answering your question, in vocational training, we ensure that the youths are taken through the skills that are needed in the Big Four agenda. Basically, we train them in masonry, we train them in agriculture, we train them in manufacturing in terms of making sure they cotton. So we grow cotton, we also grow food stuff, that is in agriculture sector. We also make sure we train them to be electricians and all other skills that are needed in the market to ensure that this country moves forward. So basically, we look at the skills that are needed in the market and we train them in the vocational training. And when the youths come, we look at their grades, of course, and therefore each one of them is taken to a course that answers to their grade. And of late, because of the health, the Big Four agenda in health, we have decided to take them to MTCs also to do nursing, so that we can also increase the numbers of health workers in the country. So we look at the market, and therefore we also introduce new skills in the market. But overall, our training is geared towards answering the demand, and especially in the 4 big agenda of manufacturing, of housing, and such kind of skills.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I remember last time we had you, we were just having this whole conversation, and you swore that we would never have another NYS 3. And maybe you could tell us a bit about the reforms that, you have been putting in place and they have taken root to just make sure that NYS continues on the right trajectory that you are hoping to leave it at by the time you are leaving office. Madam Director?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. Maybe just taking up what I had asked is in regards to the last time we had you here, you had sworn by the fact that we are not going to see NYS 3. You remember that? And maybe you could just take us through some of the reforms that you have been putting in place in terms of structures and systems within the NYS, just make sure that it is on the right trajectory and, your word is still your bond.
My word is still my bond. I've been here for 3 years now, if you realize that. It has been that long, but very short, looking at what you've been doing. And I want to start by saying that in the subsequent interviews and any other interviews I want to do, I don't want to talk about NYS 3, NYS 1, and NYS 2, because we want to bury that one in the past. Simply because of the reform and the structures we put in place. We have now strengthened our human resource in terms of making sure that we get the right skill in the right place. We have revamped our procurement department. We have revamped our accounts department. But overall, the biggest reform is the coming of the council and ensuring that National Youth Service is now autonomous. The council is overseeing us, overseeing our activities, and any program, any project we do must be thought through, canvassed, and also making sure that there's a budget for it, making sure that there are plans for it, and we have a good strategic plan that we are looking at, so that we just don't wake up in the morning and do any activities that we want. So any activity we have must be planned, and make sure that all these processes are taken through in terms of when we want to do procurement, we want to purchase anything, or we want to pay in for anything. The council has come in very strongly in terms of reforms, because the council has 4 committees, but the most important committee in terms of NYS 1 and NYS 2, as you like calling it, is the issue of coming up with a very good or a very strong audit and risk committee. that audits all the activities that we do. Another committee that is also very important is Finance and Development Committee, Finance, Enterprise and Development Committee, that first of all looks at whatever activity you want to do,
yes,
whether it is the procurement plan, for example, whether those activities are aligned to our strategic plan, and therefore when we as management now, when embark on doing the activities or implementing the activities, we are in line. We are in line with whatever the council has approved. And another reform that we have come through is we are now on IFMIS. Therefore, all our activities can be tracked through from Treasury up to here, so that we know what has been paid, what has not been paid, very, very importantly. But another very important thing that we've also done is to ensure that we have decentralized. We have decentralized all the monies. When we get money from Treasury, we ensure that the 22 units, each one of it has its own money, so that they can do their own activities, and therefore it's very easy to audit whatever activity that you're going to do has been done. And if it's a question of food, because that's why the problem was, the food has actually reached the youth and they've eaten and the stores are checked. And that is, to us, is very important. But again, in terms of making sure that the structures and procedures are very strong, we have framework contracts, something that we never had before. So right now we know our suppliers. We can tell you that, for example, if there's an activity and it's urgent, we can call upon any of our contractors that is already tendered with us, registered with us. We know them, we know their background, we know their companies, they are registered. We are able to give somebody a job very fast. And we are also ensuring that there's equity in every work we're doing. There is transparency in every type work we are doing. And therefore, that's what I'm saying. The council is there even to audit us, to audit what we're doing. And the council also reports back to the cabinet secretary, who is also put abreast on whatever we are doing at the National Service. So the work of the National Service is not a one-person show or a one-woman show. It is a question of a group, a team, a good, strong team that we have put together to ensure that all the functions are done transparently and within the law.
All right. Now, speaking of being a team, I want us to talk a bit about the aspect of inclusion, and this is now on the recruits that you get to take on as the National Youth Service, and this whole conversation around persons living with disabilities. Last year, you did make the call out in regards to each county having room for at least 2 persons under the recruit group for persons under the category of persons living with disabilities. How has it been so far in terms of adjusting to the needs of persons with disability and not discriminating within the service?
Thank you. When called out for people living with disability, first of all, we had overwhelming response from them. But I want to say that we just don't take all the disabilities.
Yes.
All forms of disabilities. We actually look for people living with albinism. We look for dwarfism. We look for at least somebody who can walk. You know, you might not have one limb, that is your hand, but you can walk. We don't take blind, so we take deaf people, and therefore we had about 47. So that means every county at least had one. Although not all of them are coming from one county, but there are certain counties that never produce any person living with disability. But in total, we had 47 of them. Now, how do we adjust? We adjust in the sense that our training program now has that component of disability, and we have ensured that we have trained our officers, especially in sign language, for example, because that is the biggest problem in terms of communication. And as I'm talking to you now, last Pass Out Parade, we had people living with the disability of not hearing, that's the deaf. They were able to pass out, and some of them were the best, and therefore we have retained them as instructors. So when they come, they are able to instruct the new ones into programs. Now, after this training, paramilitary, the most important thing also to note that even people living with disability, we will still take them to any course they want, and in any college that takes care of their disability, especially the people who are deaf. We make sure that they are taken to, for example, Nyangoma, a technical institute where they can learn how to do certain skills that they are interested in. Majority of them actually end up doing garment making, and I think that is very good. Majority of them also end up in doing other activities that really don't need a lot of talking or a lot of interaction. As the days go by, as we try to look for people living with disability, we can see the uptake is also going to be high. But remember, this is a disciplined and uniformed service, and therefore, looking at other services, I am very sure they might not be able to take people living with disability because they need to be active and they need to be officers, for example, who can walk around. But National Youth Service, because it gives the youth skills, we are able to take up this particular category of people living with disability. And it has been good. It has been gelled well. All of them are fine. All of them are happy. I'm hoping that on the pass-out parade, you'll be able to see some of them are going to be awarded the best in their category. Not best because of their disability, but because of their performance. One of them is one serviceman who is a good footballer. The young man is very good in football, and yet he does not have one hand. And that is a very good plus and a motivation to other people living with disability.
I love that. Now, speaking of the passing out parade that will be happening in a few days to come, are there any new training areas that were introduced for this particular cohort that will be graduating?
Yes, this time we included training in cybercrime because of the new and emerging threats to the youth. We have also introduced training in COVID and other disaster management. These are new things that are coming. We didn't have them before. Things like the new areas we are looking at, also ICT, of which we never talked about before. But the most important one is the cyber crime and cyber crime detection, because we realize that most of these youths also use these gadgets, the iPhones, the telephones, the iPads, and also etc. To lure other youths into crime. So those are areas that we are looked at, and basically the issue of making sure people are safe, that is something we have also taken them through. We have also introduced a course in making sure that there's a PR, they understand PR at that level, although later on they'll be taken through in a very rigorous manner, but in the college they're also taken through issues of PR and also the issues of COVID, as I said. But other than the other normal programs to normally.
All right. Now, just looking at the fact that we are in this pandemic, and of course, as a service, you had to adjust to this, and especially looking at the number of recruits that you have to ensure their health and their safety throughout this period, what are some of those adjustments that you made during the training process, and also some that we can expect to see during the pass-out parade?
Thank you, and I'm happy you have asked that question, because I want to say that when the pandemic came, everybody was at loss. They didn't even know what to do, but we were able to put a team together, and we want to thank His Excellency the President, because he believed in the National Youth Service, and we were allowed even to recruit during that period. Remember, we recruited last year before the country was open, and we were able to recruit 7,000. We were able to recruit about 8,000, but right now, because of other issues, we have only 7,000 remaining. Now, we got 7,400 because of the COVID. Otherwise, we would have targeted a number that is about 12,000. But because we wanted space, we had to do about half of the required, the total recruits we wanted. Now, number two, we ensured that the barracks were well fitted with the windows, they were open, and making sure that the social distance in everything they do, whether they're sleeping, whether they're training, we ensure that the social distancing. We ensured for the first time that every time a mask now becomes part and parcel of the uniform, something we never used to have before. We also ensured that the trainers or the trainers and the instructors were on campus throughout. Nobody was allowed to go out, nobody was allowed to come in. And in every place where we were, where the servicemen, servicewomen are, the recruits are, they are washing points, they are sanitizing all the time. They ensure that before they go into the barracks, they sanitize. Before they go into to their classrooms, they sanitize. So every place they have, they sanitize and they wear masks all the time. And in fact, even when you talk about the passing out, which you have said, and you're passing out on 24th of this month, that is Saturday, there are no parents who are coming. That is also another diverse thing that we want to do. There is no parent that is going to be there. There's no parent that is going to be there, and we ensure also that even the visitors who are coming are very few. We have only invited very, very, very few people. The sitting arrangement, we are going to have very few people coming. So this time is going to be different. We're not going to have any of the parents coming to look and watch their beautiful daughters and handsome young men graduating. So that is a different we are going to have, and I'm very sure the recruits are not going to be very happy, but because of COVID, we must take those precautions. And again, this time, normally when the recruits pass, they go home with their parents, but this time they're not going back with their parents. They are going to our 22 units. We are going to ensure they go to their units immediately after pass out.
All right, fantastic. I love that. And, looking at the fact that, you are out for the good of these recruits and the youngsters who are joining the NYS, I'd like for you to tell us a bit more about the recently introduced program, the Border Riders program, because we're living in a time where just last year and earlier on this year, there was statistics that were put out that so many young people dropped out of school and sought employment. And for most young people, they went to the border sector, and it is quite an informal, still an informal group and way of getting a coin or two. So looking at the program that you have recently introduced, of course, in partnership with NTSA, tell us a bit more about it and what is the core reason as to why you chose to take up this particular program?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that border has been a big issue in the country because of the many accidents, the many accidents across the country, and simply because what you've said, most youths, when they graduate from schools, especially class 8 and Form 4, what they do is the next job available is border because it's easily available. And we have a big number of youths now who are engaged in riding these motorcycles without even a license, without being trained, and so on and so forth. So the government, and especially His Excellency the President, saw it fit to ensure that this border sector is put back on track and ensure that there's some order and discipline on the road. And therefore, His Excellency the President is the one who directed that the National Youth Service takes up this training. This training simply because we also do character development in the National Youth Service, and the President knew we had that capacity to ensure that we partner with the NTSA to bring back sanity on the roads. And that's why the National Youth Service is actually squarely in charge of the training. We have other partners in terms of training these border people. We have Ministry of Interior because of the coordination aspect of it. We have the police because of the enforcement aspect of it. We have the Ministry of ICT and Youth making sure that we are together. But very importantly, that the National Youth Service has training school. I don't know whether people know that we have a training school, a very competent training school in National Youth Service. That's why we were given that mandate to ensure that we train this border so that we can have, first of all, discipline. That is the most important thing we bring to the table, discipline and order. And the NTSA will come up with the licensing. So the license will train, and the NTSA still licenses these border riders. The issue of bringing NYS on board, as I've said, is character development and making sure that these youths are trained and understand the highway code. But the Ministry of Interior, especially the county commissioners, the regional commissioners, assistant county commissioners, they ensure that they mobilize these youths. Now, once you mobilize these youths, it's very easy to train them in a certain region or a certain sub-county, and therefore we'll have their names, their numbers, and make sure that they come together so that they don't just ride a motorcycle, but they also are trained in making sure they have some entrepreneurial skills, so that money they get, they can form a circle and that SACCO can ensure that later on they borrow money to do other activities. Because remember, if you're a rider about a border, you cannot ride forever. Now, if they have this SACCO, that money will be able to assist them start other income-generating activities. The National Youth Service is there to ensure there's some order. I know it's a tall order. It's a tall order. Let me say that. It's a tall order because the border issue started some time back, and they've developed some culture, very, very bad culture on the road. Try to knock down a border, or the border will knock you down, and they're the ones who will feel aggrieved, and they'll ban your car. And we've seen so many cases of these borders doing bad things, crime. But let me say this, there are some borders who are very good, border riders who are very good, and they are very happy that you're introducing this training, because this training will bring sanity, this training will bring competency, this training will also ensure that they're put together and you know exactly who is where and where are you doing the riding, or where is your station or your stage. Therefore, there will be accountability. And because, again, you know that border, in every crime you have like 10 crime, since you'll always get a border of 9% will be border or 10% with the border riders involved. And therefore, we'll be also able to track down on issues of crime. So the police will also be able to ensure that they know who operates within their area. So National Service is partnering with the other partners, ensuring that there's safety, there is safety, and there's some discipline in the road in terms of border riding, and in terms of general motorcycle and motor vehicle ride in this country.
Fantastic. Now, as we draw this conversation to a close, for those who are watching us this morning, especially the younger people, the youth of our country, and they want to join the next group that will be recruited, of course, subject to the dates that are going to be put out by the service, where and how can they get this information in order to understand the requirements that they have to fulfill?
Thank you very much. After the pass out, which we are doing on 24th of this month, 24th of this month, this is this Saturday, in a 1 day to come, we will have to ensure that we have the Ministry of Health guidelines to ensure that we can actually congregate again, and therefore we don't know when we will recruit next, but we are hoping, if all goes well, we are hoping by the first week of June, we should be recruiting. Now, we'll put this advert in the newspapers. We'll also put them on our website. We'll also put them in all social media, and we'll also ensure that the Ministry of Interior, through the county commissioners, also places this advert at the chief's camp and in every unit, so that we can get as many people as possible. Therefore, we will be able to tell them, and we'll be able to advertise adequately.
All right, thank you very much. We have been speaking with Matilda Sakwa, who is the Director General at the National Youth Service. We wish you all the best as you proceed on with your tenure in office. Akutakuwa na NYS 3.
Usiseme hiyo neno tena, because I'm not here. We are here to ensure that there's no NYS 3. So the issue of NYS 1, NYS 2 should be buried. We should never talk about it. Because now, when you talk about NYS 1 and NYS 2, is good because it reminds us of our history, but we should not dwell on it. We should move forward and get courage, and we want to affirm and we want to commit that there will be no NYS, whether it's 1 or 2, there will be no other NYS. The only NYS you will see is a reformed NYS, and NYS that will be talked of and will be admired by everybody. It's unfortunate, let me say this, it's unfortunate, everybody, and every time you talk about NYS, they still think about NYS 1 and NYS 2. The most unfortunate bit is because, I'm not saying it's good, but other ministries have done bad things, worse than NYS.
Yes.
But you know, sometimes when you talk about NYS 1 and NYS 2, we condemn the service. Let me say this. The service was intact, and the young men and women were on course, and the training went on very well. The only aspect of NYS that was bad was procurement. Procurement. And
which
accounts.
you have been working to streamline.
The ones we have now fixed. But the other trainings, the other uniformed, the uniform part of NYS was intact, and it was good, and it's still serving the nation, the youth of this nation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We wish you the absolute best.
Thank you.
All right, that is Director General at the National Youth Service, Madam Matilda Sakwa. Remember, the pass-out parade will be happening this Saturday and will be streamed live here on KBC, so you definitely don't want to miss out on that, especially if you are part of the family of the recruits that will be on this pass-out parade. We are not yet done with